Well, hello and welcome to the GMIHub. So glad to have you join us this evening. We're going to have an in-depth conversation about challenging church culture. So where that takes us is going to be incredible, and I'm looking forward to it. We have two amazing guests with us. We have Jeremiah, who has been on the show before, and also we have Aaron, and we'll get more into who they are and what they're doing. But I wanted to just ask you, if you're logging in right now and you're checking out what's happening, thank you so much for doing so. We want you to take the time to look at the GMI Hub. Some other time, maybe you can go through all our videos. Also, subscribe and like the videos. That would really help us a lot. So thank you so much for that. And let me just introduce myself by saying I am Dale Borland.
And I'm Cheryl Duick. So glad to see you here. I hope that you are ready for this conversation. If you are a musician or an artist and you're tuning in right now, I will ask this question of you. You've probably been doing your art for a while now, and you've probably said to yourself, I wish that the church would support me. I wish that I could do more with what I do in a church setting. I'd love to have that backing. And for some reason you felt that you haven't had that. If you are a church leader, you have I have some questions for you. Where are you right now in your church? Where do you want to see your church going? Or has it already arrived? I ask these questions because in this conversation, we're hoping to discuss church culture. And we say challenging church culture because, we're supposed to A, love God, and B, love each other. And it doesn't matter what the outward appearance is, it's all about the heart. So today I'm very thrilled to have Jeremiah Raible from Alberta. He is an effective church effectiveness coach with the Alberta Northwest Territories. I'll say PAOC. I'm sure there's another name for it, which I just totally forgot. But but I'm so happy that he's here. He's been on here before. I love Jeremiah's heart and his passion for the church and for the body. So thank you so much, Jeremiah, for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yes. And new to our screen, we have Aaron Dumpala. For those of you who don't know, Aaron actually is a music director right now in Grace Markham Anglican Church here in Ontario. Did I get it right? But what amazes me about Aaron is that as young as he looks, he's not a teenager. He has actually worked in several different churches in the music capacity, and he has an incredible way of getting churches to embrace different styles of music. And I just thought it would be really awesome to have him here to share what he does and to share his heart about this whole thing. So, Aaron, I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is the first for me to even be on a panel discussing this. Is a few topics that have been on my mind for a long time. So thank you. I'm excited to talk about it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So how about we get started with, I'll just ask the strange question. I say church culture. What does that mean to you? When we say church culture, Jeremiah, what characteristics come to mind when you think of church culture?
Yeah, church culture for me is and every church has a different culture. It's what we value. It's how we treat one another. It's, that how then shall we live discussion. It's something that you can feel when you come into a church. So if a church has a friendly culture, right? You would feel that when you come into you would just sense that. They wouldn't be on a wall somewhere, but you would just know, man, this is a friendly church. If a church had a toxic culture, it wouldn't be long before you kind of figured that out. You would see people talking about each other, or people sharing prayer requests that are actually gossip. And you would kind of pick it up. So culture is basically that, what we value as a church, what we're all about, how then shall we live? How do we treat one another in order to fulfill the mission that God has sent us on?
Aaron, how do you see culture?
Just to build on what Jeremiah said, I think for me, the biggest word, if I had to sum it up all in one word, is community. Doesn't have to be good or bad, but just like when you move into a neighborhood, to be a good community. How's the school there? How's the area? Is there violence? Is it family friendly? Is it more? It's all these little things that make a community a community. And I'm sure we've heard the term community lunches, community fundraiser. Let's reach out into the community, right? So for me, the culture of a church is essentially being a little emblem of the community that they're in. And if unfortunately some communities aren't blessed to be as fortunate as others, how can the church play a role to now flip that? To now, go to a church where, oh, it's supposed to be in quite a rough area, but I was welcomed with open arms. I felt safe. This is a place for me where I can grow. You don't have people that we find nowadays who go to different churches out of the way, 40 minutes or an hour away, going, you know what, this is our church, even though their neighborhood and their kids and their friends and their relatives all live in a whole different city, just because that church wasn't a healthy place for them. So for me, community and culture are hand in hand, and I think it's nice to see where a church thrives to essentially lead their community.
Now, most churches have certain things, as you said, they value, and they value to the point where it becomes a part of their their customs. How do you differentiate that? Sometimes I've heard stories. I don't know if it still exists today, but I've heard stories of places where the church had a custom that the piano has to be in a certain place, or the drum kit either stays or goes, or whatever. I've heard all of that. I don't know if that still exists, but at what point in time can a church recognize when their culture or their culture is not just a list of traditions?
We're so quick to attach value to things that don't really matter. And I think it's because we live in such a changing world that we want kind of things to stay the same. So one of my colleagues, he tells a story about, he was an interim pastor at a church, Baptist church out in British Columbia, and they had a big wooden pulpit, and he's a small guy, so he if he was behind the pulpit, they would all see that. So he just preached from the floor, and he was there for 10 months and served the church well. And when the new pastor came in, he was a taller guy, so he preached from the pulpit, and two old ladies came up to him and said, "At this church, we preach from the floor."
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
the guy was only there for 10 months. And so it's very quick for us to take, this is the way we do it. We get locked into a time capsule. We get locked into a style. We get locked into something and we just say, well, this is the way that we should do it. So again, the key thing to always ask is, does this, whatever it is, whether it's singing a certain style of music or preaching from the pulpit or coffee cups in the sanctuary, or whatever, does this help us achieve the mission? And if you're not asking that question, then most likely you just keep doing this over and because you like it.
Yeah.
But if you actually start asking, does this thing, like church has been running Sunday school since the 70s, right? They've been running Sunday school prior to the service, and people just don't come, right? So you ask, does this help us with the mission? Now, if you don't know what the mission is of your church, if you don't know why your church exists, and if it, in my opinion, if it doesn't look something like the Great Commission, then you probably won't change anything. But if you actually start to say, well, how does this help us make disciples who make disciples? How does this help us help people find and follow Jesus? Well, then guess what? You're quick to be able to change whatever this is.
Aaron, how do you find traditions? Like, have you ever encountered that with all the different churches that you've worked with? Actually, how many different churches have you worked with?
Oh my goodness. Okay, starting off, well, originally, as you know, Cheryl, I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia, and churches are, first of all, illegal there. There's no such thing as a church. So where we would go for churches would be in the diplomatic quarters, because I lived in the capital at the time, and which is to me one of if it might sound strange, but if anyone gets the chance to go to a Middle Eastern country, say if you have to go for employment or whatever it is, if you need to find a place for Sunday, find their diplomatic quarters, because that's the place where it's just a huge melting pot of every single country has their own quarter, of course, right? So where you go to the British Embassy, 10 a.m. for the Anglican service. We go to the American Embassy at 7 o'clock for the Pentecostal service. We go to the Australian Embassy, usually at 5 o'clock. They'd have a midweek Wednesday for more of a Methodist. Sometimes even they had a Baptist, I believe, at 6:30. But these terms didn't really mean anything. It didn't really separate people because it'd be the same group of people just going to these different quote unquote churches just to be in worship together. We didn't even look at the label. We didn't look at the title saying Pentecostal or Anglican. We were just, hey Cliff, hey Bob, nice to see you again. That was it, regardless of the place we were. And we all came from different backgrounds. Saudi Arabia being 70% expatriate community, only 30% is the actual Saudi Arabian resident. So a huge melting pot of everyone there. So for me, when I came to Canada in about 2010, I first saw this big divide between so many denominations, where people said, I'm Anglican, I'm Catholic, I'm Baptist, I'm Lutheran. These terms meant nothing to me before, but I was first exposed to that here. So when I came more into the Anglican community, is when I started noticing little things such as how big nostalgia and routine played a part. And for me, that was quite odd because I couldn't understand, something as I think Jeremiah was mentioning about, someone preaching from the pulpit one year and someone not, is when I came into Grace Markham and the piano that was in the church was not made to fill the sound. The sound was not made to fill a whole room. It was more of an indoor piano. So I switched the pianos, and it was met with a little bit of feedback where they said, no, this piano's been here for a long time. It's been donated, and I said, oh, I apologize. I haven't removed it. It's just in my choir room now because now it's more in a more appropriate setting. Whereas now the piano that's in the church has a more of a fuller sound where it can carry a congregation. When I explained it in that term, then they were able to understand. But it definitely was a change for me that, if you have to make a change, you have to sort of explain yourself as to why you're doing it. And not everyone is going to be happy with, even if it's a logical reason, even if it's a reason that everyone's wanting to do it, but that one person doesn't want you to do it. So everyone walks around eggshells. So that was interesting to me for sure.
So it does still exist. Wow. So how does, did you have a question, Dale?
No, it was just interesting pointing out the fact that people get used to certain things, and it becomes normative to them. And once that, and not everybody's good with change. So, and I think maybe that's a natural thing for most people. So their comfort zone is the way it is, and if things change, that they get a little uncomfortable.
We attach a value. I think that's the key. It's if it means something to you, if it's important to you, it played a part in your life, then you attach a value to it. And that's where it gets tricky, because it's not just, well, I don't like it over there. I don't like that piano moved. There's something that person is attaching worth to. System. And I think pastors need to be pretty careful when they start running in and, taking out the silk plants and changing the styles and doing stuff. And I'm all in favor, for doing whatever it takes to reach those who are not yet here. But the way that we go about it, we have to manage not only for change, but for loss. So when you're managing change, you got to understand that some people are losing something. So I've seen a lot of, pastors say, oh, who cares? It's just the organ. Well, no, someone's losing something that was important to them. And so how are you managing not just the change, but how are you managing the loss? And if we can learn to manage the loss, we'll be able to make the change with greater reward.
That's a great point, Jeremiah, managing the loss. Aaron, have you had to deal with that as well? You have a comment on that?
Yes, actually. And that's one of the things that I had to learn very early, is I came from a background of churches where there was no sort of value because, for example, in Saudi Arabia, a lot of people used to come to that country maybe for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then go back to usually the UK or Australia. So no one was there. There was no sense of real community. It was a community that was always evolving with new people, but there's no such thing as, when I came here, oh, I've been here for 35 years. My grandkids got married here, or I had my
Yep.
grandchildren. Everyone has all of this rich memories, and I see these photos of the church when it was only one building, and they're in their young 20s, and now they're in my choir and they're in their late 70s. It's it is beautiful, and I understand. I really do understand now. When Jeremiah was saying the loss that some feel, because even though it was, for me, it was a logical decision of moving that piano. Someone who wasn't even, in my eyes, I didn't even know they cared about music, but it wasn't even about the music that they cared about. It was more of the reason the piano was there. It was donated in memory of so and so, and because the obviously I did not know that because I recently joined, and when I moved it, I went through the proper channels, to who I need to move it. But I never knew about this one person who was a little upset at the time, and when I explained it to them, they understood. But it opened my eyes to what Jeremiah is saying is always taking that step forward, but always making sure that you're not losing anyone as you go forward. I think it's the main thing that I've been learning, especially in this environment. So
There was a church I was working with had a marble altar kind of area, and they wanted to change the stage, and they needed to move that. They needed to kind of dismantle it. It wasn't a simple project. And they took their time to get approval, and they went through all the right channels. And one thing I really liked what they did is when they dismantled the marble, they took each piece of marble, wrapped it up in a nice red bow ribbon, attached a date to it, and gave it to every senior saint in the church as kind of a memento, a memorial. And so that's an example of managing loss, because now you're taking something, instead of just, oh, deal with it, we've had to move it so we can make more room for the stage. No, we're understanding that you're losing something, and we want to make this a special thing. And again, the people that received that gift were touched, and it made that transition that much easier.
Yeah, I guess that's similar to a similar idea. One of the churches that my husband used to go through to, I think, had church pews. And I guess if people were attached to the church pews and they wanted to change that out to just put regular chairs that they can move, so that just want more of the flexibility with the room that they were in, and they actually allowed the people of the church to take a church pew home. Like, it was their way of saying, we know we're moving out the church pews. If you would like a church pew, take one, and we so happen to have one in our home. So that's a great idea. Like, I've heard two ways of managing loss. One is communicating it. And that's, Aaron, what I picked up from what you were saying, that when you move that piano, the fact that you had to take time and explain the why behind it, that the people became okay with it, because to them, they were, you're moving my friend. No, we're just putting that person in a more appropriate place where they will shine more, and I think that's important, communicating. And Jeremiah, I love your example of, let them have a piece. If they feel they're going to lose it, give them a chance to take it. Give them a chance to take it for themselves, even if it's just a little piece of it, so that they can not feel that loss so greatly.
They have to grieve it, right? They or give them an opportunity to mourn that loss, and that's okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's very good. Okay, so at what point in time does tradition turn into religiosity? How do we know the difference between what we value to the point of it crossing the line to religiosity?
let Jeremiah start this one.
Oh, I've started every one, so I was like just waiting. Yeah. Well, tradition should always point you back to your roots. That's what tradition is. It's not just something we do because we've always done it. It actually should be a reminder of where we've come from. And unfortunately, what tends to happen is we just start doing it, and we don't know why we do it. Again, we tell the story of the young bride gets married. She's cooking a Easter ham, and she cuts off the ends of the ham. And the new husband says, honey, why you do that? And she says, well, I don't know. My mom always did that. So, goes through, and Thanksgiving comes along and sees the mom cutting off the ends of the ham. And so he says, Mary, why do you do that? And she says, well, actually, I don't really know. My grandmother used to do it. When Christmas comes along and Christmas time, they're together, and the grandma there, she's cutting off the ends of the ham, and says, Grandma, why do you do that? And she says, well, because it won't fit in my pot otherwise. So there's an example of those generations doing something one way, but not really understanding the why behind what we do. And that's where it can become something that we have to look at, where why do we do what we do? And if it really is to draw us back to our roots, to draw us back to something sacred, or to celebrate a tradition, then is it achieving its purpose in order to move us forward? And you got to understand, like, if you look at, great traditions throughout history, those traditions don't keep us stuck where we were. It actually propels us forward. Knowing where we've come from gives us the strength to move ahead. But getting stuck from where we were keeps us from going forward forever. And so traditions actually serve to remind individuals whose they are, where they actually belong, so that they can actually move forward and do something new and fresh, because they know from where they came. But what tends to happen is we attach value to it, or we do things without asking the why, and they just become something we do until someone comes along and says, why do you use that piano when it's not suitable for that room? Well, I don't know. Right?
Yeah, before I had it, I don't know.
We've always done it that way.
Yeah. And just to build on what Jeremiah was saying, is just take the simple example. I'm sure every church goes through this. What are the 2 times, maybe 3 times? Let's just stick with 2. The highest the highest number of people that walk through those doors, Easter, Christmas. That's for our church anyway, right? And I'm pretty sure this is all around. Grandmas bring their grandkids in because the child who hasn't really been to a church says, you know what, this will make your grandma happy, so let's go have Easter, then we can go for lunch after. And it becomes it's an event. It's more of a day in their calendar. And Christmas, of course, I don't need to say anymore, but Christmas is a huge part of everyone's lives, whether you're religious or not. And the amount of people that would come through the doors, especially not even if they have a connection, but just because in their heads they've growing up, I've always been in church during Christmas. And where's the closest church? It doesn't even matter why I'm going, but it's Christmas. I should be in a church, just because that's that nostalgic element that they have. So what Jeremiah mentioned, which I thought was very interesting, is now you have multiple generations. And now that we move into 2021, where I can see a photo of this church from, I believe, 1970 or 1968, and Sunday school was an army. They had multiple youth pastors. The church was full to the brim. You couldn't let anyone ill, and that became tradition because those values were set. But once the next generation came in, a little less, and now the next generation a little less. But we're still doing it. But now some people just don't know why they're doing it. It's more, my mother used to come here, and in honor of her, I come here. We're now attaching all these ulterior motives and forgetting why we're really going to a church. It's more like going to, I hate to use an example, but when you go to a cemetery to remember someone, it's almost, that's what's becoming the nature of a church, where it's a place for you to relive memories or pass the tradition down because you did that in your younger life. So yeah, I can definitely see how tradition is, I would say, now losing its value as it progresses without anyone really asking why anymore.
So I've heard 2 important questions to ask. One is, does what we do help us achieve the mission? And 2, why do we do what we do? Right? I've heard 2 major questions, which I think are very important for us to ask, whether we are leaders in a church or we're part of a ministry, it sounds like it's okay to ask the question why. But then there are some churches that don't like being asked the question why. What do we say to those places that say, we just do what we do and that's final? Like, how do we handle that?
I mean, you go back to the story of the steward. I mean, we don't own anything, right? So we're stewards of the time, talent, and resources that God sends us. So to think otherwise is pretty foolish. So if you say, well, we do what we do and we don't question why, then, I mean, the story of the talents is pretty clear. What happens to the servant that buries the talent and decides, you know what, I know you're a hard man to deal with, and so I'm just going to bury it, and then I'll give you back what you gave me. And what is this? What does the master say to the servant? You're wicked and lazy.
Yeah.
And so it's important to understand for churches that want to put their head in the sand and say, well, we just do what we do and we scatter seed. And again, John, the book of John, Jesus talks about being fruitful. You will know it by your fruit. So what is the fruit of your ministry? And so again, go to the end of the book, Revelation. You see the Lord of the church in the book of Revelation going around and blowing out the candles of the churches that weren't obedient to the mission. Right. So you can't come to me and say, well, I didn't know. Yeah, you do. If you read the Bible and you understood the themes of scripture, you actually know what we're here to do. Yeah. So you and I, we're here to make disciples who make disciples. We're here to help people find and follow Jesus. And Dale, if it's a concert that's going to make that happen, then do it. But if it's not making it happen, then don't. And you talked about tradition there, Aaron. You talked about people coming to church just because of tradition. I capitalize on that. People come at Christmas and Easter. I say come.
And it's a great way to meet new people in the community.
Absolutely. And let me invite you to come back the Sunday after Easter and the Sunday after Christmas. Let's do everything short of sin to help people follow Christ, because you and I believe that knowing Jesus is the best decision anyone could ever make. So why wouldn't we want that for everyone we come into contact with?
That's a powerful statement that Jeremiah just made. We have been doing some discussion about challenging church culture. We're more talking about what ways we can recognize ways to reach out better and be maybe even to be concerned about things that we're doing ourselves we don't realize. So as we're talking today, we hope that we're blessing you. And if we are, we want you to take some time to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. We just want you to know that we have a resource of videos that are on the GMIHub online, and you can check those out. It'd be really good. We have a website. It's GMIHub.ca. We want you to go and check that out. And just to interject at this point in time, maybe Cheryl, you could tell us more about this, but we have an incredible opportunity for you as a songwriter to actually submit your songs for a Christmas project was coming up this year.
You can actually go to gmihub.ca and get more information about the Christmas project. We are inviting people to use their talents, whether they're singers, songwriters, producers, but basically pool your talents together for one common purpose, and that is to create some music for the Christmas season that's brand new and fresh for people to celebrate with. If you want more information, go to gmihub.ca/Christmas project and you'll get all the details there. So I'm going to tradition, religiosity. I want to now bring it back to the music. Let's talk styles of music here. How does tradition and or religiosity dictate the music we listen to or the music that's played in the church?
Jeremiah, if you don't mind, I'd like to open up this discussion. As for me, I look at my history with music in the church as being not necessarily rich. It's more to me, it's beautiful because I was exposed without even knowing to so many different styles of music. Going back to what I said in Saudi Arabia, where every denomination was there because that was just the embassy that the country had. It wasn't because there was more Anglicans than Pentecostals. There were more than this, than that. My mother is a Mennonite. My father came from an Anglican background. So I mean, right from genetics, I was mixed from the get go, and being thrown into music quite early. I was classically trained for a very long time, and then as anyone does when they're young, you get a little restless. You don't want to play Chopin or Bach all day. You try to play something else, something that gives you joy. And for me, at the time, and still is, it was jazz. I just love jazz. I love the no rules um, element to jazz, where play what's not there. Like play that play with people you've never met before and just go feel the music and all these little things that I've never learned before, where classical is about reading what's in front of you, what's printed. You don't dare change it because you're not the author or the lyricist or uh, the one who wrote that song. So now bringing that back to Christian music or religious music, um, back in Saudi Arabia, we were more exposed to very modern music, where I'm talking Hillsong. I don't say like Gaither for sure, but that sort of style where everything was post 1980, 1990. We were never exposed to anything before that. And when I came to Canada and we started visiting a couple of Anglican churches, and first thing in my mind, and mind you, I was 13 years old when I came, so I was still a young teenager, and I was very confused as to what is this slower pace of music, the sort of drawn out, the sort of um, very anthemy sort of music where even some of it is in a different language, and the congregation don't necessarily know what they're singing, but they're singing it because they know the melody and the words is printed in front of them, right? There's no real connection. There was a very big disconnect that I felt anyway, because as a person who was singing something I didn't know about, I said, why am I singing this every single week? I don't understand what it is for. No one explained it to me. Um, but once I understood, okay, or okay, so this is what this style of music is. And when I went into the history of it, when I actually started playing in Anglican churches, understanding the liturgical calendar, why we play certain songs when we do, and to me, it was a perfect blend only because I had that exposure to playing with musicians from different denominations, playing all styles of music, maybe some music that I personally didn't like, but I would still play it because, our band leader chose it. And I learned to like it because it was new to me before, but now it's not new. And when I came to Canada and exposed to more of this traditional style of music, um, just a background, I love history. I'm a history person, day in, day out. So for me, I enjoyed that there was such rich history behind the words, behind the melody, where sometimes I did find lacking in some of the modern music, where, sometimes we find artists that are just making music because they find the four chords or the six chords that work, slap a couple verses in there. There we go. We have a gospel song, right? It's to me, it is important to draw from both, and that's something where at Grace, I had the privilege to introduce. Being I was 18 when I got this position, quite a young music director, and this church essentially did not like change at all. If they sang a song, they sang it the same way. They didn't change the tune, they didn't change the melody, they didn't change the harmony. That's the song. And when I remember, I'll never forget. This was my first weekend. Sorry, my first month in. I was quite I, I really wanted to change the emotion in the church. When I say emotion is, we all get in, we do our job, we leave. That was sort of the schedule of the day. But my churches that I've been part of before, it was such a huge community spirit where you would connect with people by looking at them and singing. It was filled with emotion where I didn't see that here. And I remember I stopped playing the piano as a song was mid chorus, and I just stood up and I started clapping and I went up and down the aisle clapping and singing with everyone a cappella, and you could see the strangeness in everyone's eyes saying, what is this, what are we doing, why are we, and I sort of encouraged them to get out of that shell. Yes, this may be uncomfortable, get out of it, really listen to the words you're singing. Don't sing them because they're on a PowerPoint screen and you know that there's verse 4, verse 5, and now we close the book. Read the words, and sing them to yourself, and then really understand what that is. So anyway, well, I didn't mean to ramble there, but
That's okay.
that's my take
You
on
gave
that.
a, you gave a key example on like taking a church to maybe explore a different way of expressing themselves musically, and it may have taken some people out of their comfort zone, but others may have thought that was really nice. And so they take that moment with them.
I just had the vision of a movie, a Christian movie that I saw of a preacher who was from one denomination type of church that did certain things certain ways. But for some reason, his heart was just very excitable. Like he was just, I mean, they were very, what would be seen as traditional, like you said, Aaron, kind of, we sing a certain way, we don't change, almost classical, so to speak. You don't change the words, you don't change the style, you just sing it this way. And he would read the words and get excited, and he'd like clapping his hands and going walking up and down the aisle or running up and down the aisle going, whoa, yes, Jesus, kind of thing. And the whole church thinks he's crazy, kind of idea.
And I just want to make a quick point. When you said that, one example that I use very often is just because every Anglican church that I usually go to, when I hear the song "What a Friend We Have in Jesus," right? It's a song that everyone knows, no matter what denomination. And it's
I was waiting for you to sing, Aaron. Come on.
Oh, here we go. No, I'm not gonna. But it's that very slow tempo was in the churches that I went to here, and I was like, what a friend. It was quite slow, almost like a funeral style. And someone told me, it's like, oh no, we actually play this for funerals. And I said, so now you've labeled this. You've labeled this as, oh, this is a funeral song. This is a wedding song. This is I'm like, but what about the song? What about the history of the song? What about the words? What about that anymore? That doesn't matter. It's no. This is for this. This is for this. And that's that. We take it out of the folder when needed. We put it back in the folder when we're done, and we see it next year. And so amazed by that. And I wanted to change that so badly. So I brought in a drum in the church, and I just started speeding up the tempo with every verse. And I was making them physically move, sing the words differently than what they've convinced themselves that that's the way we sing this in this church. And just seeing the joy in people's faces, just seeing what is going on, but I love it. Just seeing that open expression, breaking them out of that shell. And of course, I'm sure many were uncomfortable because it wasn't, quote unquote, played on the organ. It wasn't but it opens the conversation that even if they did not like that, that's okay. You can come to me and tell me, you know what, Aaron, something about that I didn't like, and we'll talk about it, and we'll say, oh, of course. And one thing that I always like to do is I like to split, because we do have an organ in the church, is I like to split my music 50-50 always. I always try to play 50% on the organ, a little more traditional, and 50% piano, a little more contemporary. I always blend because for me, it is really important. That's a spinning image of what I am as a musician. I was exposed to these both sides. And yes, sure, I may be working in an Anglican church where everyone thinks it's all traditional. But if someone walks in and someone moved into Markham and they walk into a church, I want them to experience everything. You may not like everything, but you're exposed to everything. You have the variety and choice and change, and you see things that are always moving forward as opposed to stuck in a time capsule.
Well, every time I go into a church, I ask this simple question: what year is it here? In some churches, it's 1812.
Yes.
And in other church, or 1912. In other churches, it's 1812. In some churches, it's 1952. And they got the wooden pulpit and the ties and all that. And then in some churches it's 1982. They've got the big shoulder pads and they're singing Al Shaddai and they got the plants. And then in some churches it's 1992 and they've got the flags and they're waving the flags and you say 1992 called. They want their flags back. You can't have their flags back, And so you ask the question, what year is it here? And again, to me, none of the conversation. I mean, I've been a music pastor. I understand changing styles and doing throwbacks and high church and all. I mean, I love it all, and I can do it all. But I think when it comes down to it, we just have to ask the question: is this about our preferences, or is this about the mission? And as long as it's about our preferences, then the music pastor is never going to be able to get it right because they're always going to tick somebody off. And instead of asking, what kind of music do I like? I think we should be asking, what kind of music's going to reach Markham? What kind of music's going to reach Mississauga? What kind of music's going to reach Edmonton? And do what's going to reach people who aren't yet in the room. And yeah, if you want to have a night of hymns, and yeah, if you want to go ahead and do some throwbacks, then by all means gather and do that in another time. But when it comes to the overarching sound and style and what the church represents, I mean, if you're not asking, well, what's reaching the people, then you're just going to be listening to the strongest voice in the room. And so yeah, it's really important to just, if you don't have mission, then all you got is preferences. And then when all you got is preferences, then you've got people who have, who pay more or who have invested more, and they're the ones that get the say. And all of the people in your community will never hear.
Should Sunday morning then be for the church body, or should it be for outreach?
Yeah, then that's a question we always get. The church itself, Jesus created the church. He said, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail. So the church postal code should be getting bigger. The kingdom of heaven advances and the kingdom of hell decreases. That's the mission of the church. Now it's not Sunday. The mission of the church was never to gather on Sunday morning. The mission was to make disciples. Jesus didn't say, go into all the world and gather at 10:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning in a building. So, as long as I can't have that conversation, because that's not the mission of the church. Mm-hmm. Now, you want to talk about mission strategy. Sunday morning is a great time for people who don't come to church to come to church. You could try and do a Wednesday thing, and you could try and do a Friday thing. I mean, you could try, but I think if I picture myself in an office working with a bunch of non-Christians saying, hey, would you like to come to my church with me? It's probably going to be, it would make most sense for it to be Sunday morning. And again, I think there's a way that in that Sunday morning service, everyone can experience God. The curious, the cynic, the person who was dragged there by their auntie, the passionate, sold out Christ follower, the nominal Christian. I think Sunday morning, we should be creating an environment as worship leaders where everyone can experience God. And all it takes is just a little bit of the golden rule. Put yourself in someone's shoes. Put yourself in their shoes. So if all I can do is stand and look at your lyrics, would I understand it? If I had no biblical background, would I understand what I'm reading? And if you just made a decision to say, you know what, we're going to make sure the songs we sing are songs that anybody in Canada with a non-religious background could understand if all they could do was stand there and look at the lyrics. So that's one way, small way, that you can just, include those who have yet to come.
What about the younger generation? If we were looking into, I'll say, mainstream styles of music, there could be anything from the hip hop rap to the heavy metal rock to the, I'm not sure, it could be punk, it could be all these different styles, which I know traditionally, there's that word again, has not been part of, is there such a thing to say mainstream church? Does that sound right? I don't know. But I know traditionally they haven't been a part of a church. But yet, to your point, Jeremiah, and I love what you said, is if we as a church decide that we want to be a church that reaches the unchurched or reaches the people that are out there outside of the walls, and we want to bring them in, and we want to use music to do that, is it wrong to say, well, if I know that my neighborhood is a bunch of youth that are, I don't know, playing basketball and rapping to one another, that we get a church that adopts rap and raps the gospel? Like, does that sound obnoxious? I don't know. Like, what does that sound like?
It all comes down to your understanding. Can culture be redeemed? Can people be redeemed? And that's what it comes down to. If you don't believe that people can be redeemed, if you believe that kind of once a sinner, always a sinner, and once evil, always evil, you don't believe in the redemptive power of the gospel and sanctification and the ability of the Spirit of Christ to indwell in an ordinary person and change their lives forever, then this conversation we can't have, because you won't believe that rap can be redeemed, or heavy metal can be redeemed, or the drums can be redeemed and used for godly purposes, because you don't believe in redemption. So if you believe in redemption, it should be pretty obvious that all things, like Paul said, I become all things to all men. Why? So that I may win some. So to me, it's a pretty obvious question. And I would say there is a huge deficit in Canada of the millennial generation. So that is 25-year-olds to 35-year-olds. Okay, those aren't teenagers. These are adults in the workplace. These are up and coming or current managers, business owners, parents with young children. They are the largest demographic in Canada, the largest, bigger than the boomers ever were. And yet they are the most least represented in the Canadian church. They are absent from the Canadian church. And so unless your church, I mean, again, go fish where the fish are. It's the best place to fish. Start fishing for millennials. Start baiting your hook that millennials. So talk about the things that matter. Have an amazing kids program. Play music that millennials listen to. Go look at the radio. It's all geared to that generation. So again, you just got to be thinking more like a fisher of men than a sitter in pews or a singer of songs or a listener of sermons. Yeah. And boy, if Jesus said, "Follow me and I'll make you a listener of sermons," I would have said, "No, thanks." No, thanks. But because he said, "Follow me and I'll make you a fisher of men," man, I experienced his grace, his mercy and love in my life. And I want that for everyone else. And I'll do whatever it takes short of sin to see that happen.
Yeah, just to build on this is what Jeremiah is saying. I mean, one of the reasons where I was, having a chat with Nicola Skinner, who's the Reverend Nicola Skinner, who's the priest in charge here at Grace Markham. And when she gave me the position at 18 years old, I was in no way musically qualified as, say, your most recent organist, pick your choose, whichever cathedral, whichever church, 10 years of this, masters, played in various countries and so on and so forth. So when I got the position, I was truly shocked, because I would be fill-ins for multiple churches. I never had I didn't even put a thought towards that. But she gave me the position and said, if you like it, it's yours. And also she explained to me why. And to see that, just having a different mindset from a different demographic. I mean, being 18 years old, I was terrified. I was so terrified to not only conduct worship, but also to now lead the choir program, which the age gap is easily 40 to 50 years. How do I create this intergenerational connection? Is it even possible? I was never exposed to that. And once I really got my stride in, and I was getting comfortable, and then I was being able to sort of stand up for what I also truly believe in, and taking what I've seen from a whole different country and not being afraid to bring it in. Because thankfully Nicola was also very supportive. She said, it's Aaron, whatever I trust it. Trust this to you. No one was putting their fingers in as well. So it gave me a lot of freedom to sort of really create something that not that I'm also just proud of, but something where I feel like I am achieving something. I'm not just filling in a job requirement where I slap on my resume and off I go. I don't look back in the years. I have to tell my, who knows, my grandkids when I'm that age, saying, "Oh, did you know your granddad was an organist back then?" It's not for that. That's not the purpose. And what you see behind me is one of my biggest dreams that I wanted to create here. It's the Parkway Studio, and this just got built right before COVID. We got a grant a year ago from the Diocese of Toronto, and essentially this was my pitch, exactly what Jeremiah just said. I went out to them and talked to them about the problem of that millennial, and I guess now Gen Z even, divide, where you have all of the founding members of the church, I like to call them, right? The pillars, the one who put in their hard-earned money to fix that generator, to add a new organ, to, pay for all the little bills, so they own a part of the church. This is how they feel. How do you now bring that into the next generation where, this could be up for debate, where a lot of youth have their own opinions by the time they're 10. They've convinced themselves that, I'm an atheist, I'm agnostic, I'm whatever, I'm this. And, I mean, me growing up, I never even had the choice, really. You went to church on Sunday. That was it. But when kids have an option at such a young age, like 6, 5, 7, saying, "Oh, I don't want to go to church today," and parents going, "That's okay, sure, stay home." To me, that was a huge difference. I don't know if that's a societal thing.
No, I mean, I was young too. Is you grow no matter what. You go.
Okay, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, say my age group. So I'm 24 right now. I just turned 24 recently. So a lot of my friends who are just recent university grads as well are shocked that I work in a church, because what their perception of a church is all the negatives, right? All the stigmas, all of the scandals, all of the stories that you hear in ministries, that it's now created this view of them saying this is what church is today, and that's what it forever is. I've read it on Google. I have it all at my fingertips. Why would I need to go to church? I can just look it up, right? That's the view of the world. So for me, my biggest connection was, okay, why am I here? Right? I'm, of course, definitely a Christian. I come from a Christian background, Christian roots, all that, which is great. But what about the people who don't have that? What about the people who don't have that exposure? What's that one thing that connects everyone? And to me, it was music. Simple as that. Music. Start the conversation there. And what we did is we went out in the area, and then I'm just talking about Markham. Our church is situated between Markham District High School, Franklin Public School, and a couple other schools. So quite rich in a younger demographic. And we went out, we talked to kids, we're saying, would you be okay coming to a church just to play some music, maybe just record music? Is there something that you've always wanted to try that you haven't been able to? Especially one example is the drum kit.
Yeah.
The amount of drummers who, they wanted to play the drums, the only chance they get is high school, because that's where the drum kit is. Their parents are not going to put a drum kit in their living room because the kid's going to hit the drums all day. No one wants that in their house. The neighbors don't want that. And already you're restricting someone's potential, right? So when we came here and we were discussing, okay, what is the purpose of the studio? What's the purpose of this entire room? Is we were blessed to be given this room. I couldn't ask for anything more, but it was to reach out to all of these upcoming musicians, artists. It doesn't even matter. You don't have to know about music. Are you interested in podcasts? Because now podcast is a huge element where people enjoy just conversing. And they put it on whatever, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and everyone's interested in media production. We have a girl in this church. She's about 8 years old. Phenomenal tap dancer. And I said, would you ever be interested if we make you a platform? You can record some of your tap dancing routine. It'll help your portfolio. You could even, if you'd like to involve a bit of gospel music, and because I know that's her style. She said, oh, that's fantastic. It's finding these little talents that's already in your church. You don't have to keep going out. And this is one of the biggest, I'd say, frustrating parts that I find is the amount that we go out and hire people, especially when we're creating, like Jeremiah was mentioning, where now Zoom services or online services are a performance. It's a show. How many views do I get compared to the church down the street? Or how many people shared my video as opposed to the downtown church? This competition for no reason. Doesn't matter, right? If you have a bass player, you have a trumpet player, you have 3 vocalists in your church, sure, they might not be the RCM caliber, or they might not be conservatory grade. That's not the point. You don't have to go. I can also go out and pay someone $150 a day just to play a drum kit for a recording session. And, the music is going to sound wonderful. Everyone pats themselves on the back, say, great job, Aaron, great music. But is that music from Grace Markham? Is that music from this community for the community? No, it's everyone can hire someone. So my outlook is find people who are already here, and sometimes it's just they're shy, or sometimes they just have never been given the opportunity or something, or someone has never asked them. Someone has never approached them and said, oh, hey, I heard that you play flute, or is that true? Oh yeah, I played it years ago, but I haven't touched it in so long. It's like, oh, you know what? We actually have a flute. That's part of our recording studio equipment that no one's using. Did you want to? I don't know. Would you like to? And it's opening that door and sort of not forcing them to come inside, but just opening the door and saying it's here if you would like to. I know I would love to work with you in that way, and I think it'll be a great time. And to me,
What I'm hearing, Aaron, is you're building bridges between those individuals, and you're giving them an opportunity to come into your community, and I think that's beautiful. Yeah, so I'm just take a little time to say thank you for those of you tuning in so far. We are doing GMIHub online. We're talking music ministry, challenging church culture, and we got Jeremiah and Aaron, and they're both sharing their heart here. And if you're enjoying some of this, you're gleaning something from this, make a comment down below. Engage with us. Let's be part of our community and say a little, hey, how are you? Don't forget to put the thumbs up, click the like there, and subscribe if you haven't already. We really appreciate and value you to do that. That'd be great for us. And also, we have the website, gmihub.ca. On there, you can check out different things we have. We also have something that we're really proud of, our Christmas compilation CD, and that is ongoing, starting until, what was the date that's closing for submissions, Cheryl?
June 13th. Well, while Aaron was talking, I've got a whole bunch of questions that came through. So I'm trying to go through and see which ones do I ask. So I had 3 questions. I'm not even sure which one should go to whom, but one was non-church music. Should that be all right to be played in church on a Sunday morning? And I think, Jeremiah, your response was, if it can be redeemed, why not? Was that kind of appropriate?
Well, again, I think I don't know what they mean by non-church music. I think you just gotta think it through and ask yourself, how does this help everyone experience God, in that context? So if it's a song that makes sense in a sermon, or it's a part of a video montage or something like that, and it serves to help the mission, but if it's going to bring more offense, then let's find another venue for it again. So I think you got to use wisdom.
Yeah. Based on what Jeremiah said, that was one of the most exciting things that I think for me when I started to play here, is my perception of Anglican music was stay within the lines, stay within the little structure that they've given you. Don't change it. Don't change the shape. Don't add anything. Don't remove anything. Just do as everyone's done before you, and you'll be fine. That was what essentially was my idea. And thankfully, Nicola was also someone who was guiding me in not just liturgical music, but also giving me, like I said, the freedom to show them new genres, new styles. And when we even did certain songs, like Jeremiah mentioned, it is important. Like, for example, we did a song, Bridge Over Troubled Water, right? It's no way a Christian song, but it's an uplifting song. It's a great message. It's of course, there's that nostalgic element for those in the church that enjoy that piece of music and they've heard it outside the church. It's a piece of music where also now the younger generation also know very well. And right away, just looking at my disconnect when I went to my first Anglican church years at 13, I'm hearing phrases in Latin for an hour. I have no idea what's going on. No one really, those who know, it's because they've been there for 40, 50 years, and that's who's going to know. No one else is going to know. As long as we know, we're fine, right? That was the approach. And when I did songs like that, and of course we'll have to take out some words just based on what Jeremiah is saying. Will it cause offense? Will it creating that balance where you're making a connection almost into the real world. The problem is that we've all created a bubble, this little church bubble that. Are you a member? Are you a member of this church? Do you know how we do things here? Welcome. Here's a name tag. Welcome. Now you're part of the church. What about that family that just moved in, that walked through those doors, that haven't lived in Markham for 10 years, 15 years? What about them? What are their 7-year or 8-year-old kids? If I can get a 5-year-old to start clapping and smiling, and even though they can't even understand what they're doing, it's just joy on their faces, as opposed to just please the older generation. I would rather that, because that is the next chapter. Isn't that why we're all here? Is it, there was a great interview I watched where they were talking about the example of the late night show that I'm sure everyone's familiar with, right? You know, the whole idea where you had Johnny Carson, then Jay Leno, and then Conan O'Brien, and then da da da. Anyway, so the idea of saying they don't own the late show. This is a bus. So if you take that same metaphor, use it as a church. The church is a bus. You you've been given the great privilege and honor to drive that bus for whatever time, even as music director in my example, is you take that bus, you refurbish it, get some better tires, you maybe increase the seats, whatever it is, and then when the next driver's ready, you come off, you give him the keys, and off he goes. You don't puncture the tires. You don't make sure that there's only a little bit of gas left so that it's still going. I mean, it's almost done, but as long as we push it for the next 10 years, 15 years, because that's all that matters. I think if we change that, the way we look at church as not just being a room full of furniture pieces and filled with tradition and wonderful photos and the memories, like an old high school almost, that it's a great place, it's always served the community. Let's change that and make it not just evolve. It's like something as simple as a studio is the amount of traffic we're getting from youth in the area. People I've never met personally, just word of mouth going, Aaron, is that studio ready yet? I'm like, oh, hi, sorry, what's your name again? And I'm meeting kids. They're 40, 50, and we've got a little park in the corner that they see my lights on all the time at night. And they come pop by, knock on the window, and they say hi. You know what I mean? It's such a natural excitement that I'm not even really going out of my way to recruit. It's people who are naturally excited to be part of something. And if every church can find their niche, like Jeremiah's saying, speak to the community you are. This may not be for a community out in Alberta. I don't know. It just so happens that because we're situated in such a heavily family-centered area that, it's something that connects a lot of people here. So
that makes sense. To some of the things that Cheryl had some questions that she had written down, and it brings up these 3 points: is where are the churches now? Where do they want to be? And where should they be? Those maybe are questions that a church may ask themselves when it comes to their community. Like, what are we doing now? What do we want to do? What should we be doing? So, and how to make those things a reality.
That's right. That's right. I know, Aaron, you answered this question already, which is, should churches pay musicians or use what God has given you? And your answer was pretty much, use what's there, like use who God's given you, correct?
Why not? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not saying don't pay musicians. That's not the idea, because there are musicians who give their entire life to, say, if it's music, church worship, and they're also human, which they have to make their way in life. No one ever, we have to obviously observe that. But when it comes to going out of your way to find something, if you're finding a musician, in my opinion, if you're finding a musician or a vocalist or whatever it is, just for the sole purpose of making the quality of sound better, just to be like, let's make this the best sound possible for the congregation so that they can enjoy the music right away, that should not be the way you should be doing it. If that's sort of the plan B, plan C, absolutely. My first thing that I like to do is go out into the congregation. I can highlight 3 bass guitar bassists who can play, right? I can find maybe a couple drummers who I already know. Why would I need to go out of my way to hire someone, even if they're better? That's, being better that's not the reason. It's more, now I'm taking away an opportunity to get someone into the world that I was so blessed to be given, that maybe they just haven't been given that opportunity. Whereas someone who's a professional musician and who does this as their living every day, and it's for them, it's a job, right? They come in, they say, thank you. What a beautiful church. Oh, well, is this your name? Nice to meet you. Text me when you need me. Where's the connection there? What have you really done? What have you achieved? In my opinion, I definitely go into your own community and your own church. Look there, because I can promise you, there's someone there, or someone's son, someone's neighbor, someone where that's the connection you can build right there. There's always a potential connection.
We talked about church and how they're able to reach out to the community by utilizing their own given talents and also being compassionate in the sense of knowing what the needs are for your congregation so that you can move forward and not just make decisions based on what you think is right, but what's best for the church as a whole. So let's say if you could give me three different points that you may want to share with somebody who's in. First of all, we'll talk about a church who's maybe right now, because of COVID, they're kind of doing everything online. Everything's online. So what can we do? Be one advice for them to help them in this time to speak to those needs. Another question is, since potentially things will be opening up in a while, what's the out of the gate one thing they can do to help reach out to their community and help to utilize the culture they're in? And maybe there's some things they could do even now before that. And then the last thing is, maybe you could give some advice. You think that you could say, if I wanted to share something with you that I've gone through personally, I think you should know this.
Yeah, for me, when it comes to churches online, I just, all I see are churches doing their Sunday morning services online. And I mean, if you just look at online habits, nobody sits and watches something for, an hour and a half. It's 90-second videos. And so I've been challenging churches, rather than focus on their Sunday morning services. And, you can still do that because people can't make it. Why not focus on how many new people are we going to reach online? How many new likes? How many new and unique views? So I've got churches getting Google Analytics. Now they're looking at their unique views. They're getting their website SEO optimized. They're taking, selfie videos, recording inviter videos, or the pastor's talking, hey, I'm Pastor Jeremiah, talking about mental health for 90 seconds. And it's just boom, through the roof. They've got new people engaging, they've got new people liking. And if you just shift your focus to how many new people every 3 months, it will absolutely change how you do online. It will change your church, because you can still go ahead and do your online services for 90 minutes or whatever. But if you every week start putting out content, and you start, even using Facebook ads to kind of promote that content, you will build a connection. You will build trust with people. We got one guy in one of our churches that does, he's on TikTok now. He's 56 years old. He's on TikTok. He does a thing called Jogging with Jesus. And his followers are he just jogs. And then he just talks about Jesus, talks about faith in language that any Canadian can understand. And it all came from me challenging him. How many new people are you reaching online? And once he realized, you know what, my online services aren't really going to reach anyone new, he totally changed what he did. And when things open up again, I've been challenging our churches, I mean, even before they open up, is to ask this simple question: how many people will we touch with the love of Jesus in our community? How many people will we touch with the love of, and for churches that are, I would say every 3 months, touch the amount of people that are in your church. So if you're a church of 400, touch 400 people every 3 months. And by the time the year finishes, you will have touched 4 times as many in your congregation. And all that simply is bring a donuts and coffee to the local school, to the staff, and just say, God loves you, and so do we, from your friends at Grace Church. Or, first responders, bring some donuts to them. Or we got churches that are writing cards to seniors and to frontline workers. And we got one church in a small town. He decided to bake cakes for marriages for Valentine's Day that were over 50 years. And the word got out, and he ended up baking 35 cakes. And it went viral in the town because the town promoted it, talked about how these pastors are baking cakes and celebrating love. So if you just start blessing your community, sowing seeds of blessing, building connections and relationships with people in your community, Anthony, Aaron, you talked about you're surrounded by schools. How many teachers are you connected with? Connect with the principals and just say, how are things going and what can we do to serve? One of the high schools that we connected with, they had a program for youth, but they needed snack food. They didn't have snack food for these teens to come in. So our church provided, we took we did granola bars and we collected them up, and we provided enough snack food for that program to run for 2 years. Now,
that's a blessing. Awesome.
Because of that, we got in and we did an alpha in that high school because of that connection that we made. So it's all about building connection, and it's all about blessing. And if churches asked every 3 months, how many people are we going to touch with the love of Jesus? And could you imagine in our province right now, almost all of our churches, about 130 churches, are doing this. And can you imagine if you couldn't go 24 hours in your city without a church blessing you, or hearing of a church that's just constantly, the church is on the move, doing acts of kindness, showing people, hey, God loves you, and so do we. And I wrote a whole article about it. We'll link to it maybe, about just some new metrics for churches to consider in COVID. And, just in close, my advice to you would be always ask, why do we do what we do? Challenge the notion to keep the things the same, and ask yourself, how is this helping us do what Christ commanded? Because at the end of the day, you and I will stand accountable for every dollar and for every minute that we used of the Lord's resources.
Very cool.
And will we give an account that says, look at what we did, look at how we worked together with the Holy Spirit to see people's lives transformed and changed?
One thing I cannot stress more than this, you hear something's called the silver lining, right? Where, of course, COVID and what a terrible time this is, and everyone's lives are upside down. There's always a silver lining, but this is the gold, the platinum, diamond, whatever. This is the best opportunity for churches, the best opportunity for churches to reach out into not just their community, but all of a sudden there's no wall anymore. There's nothing. There's no one has to make the 20-minute, 40-minute, 1 hour drive to make sure their schedule's okay for that 1 hour, hour and a half drive back. That's done. It's over. You now expanded your connections automatically just by being online. And what we'll definitely notice is, as church moves on, 2022, 2023, watch how live streaming is now going to be the new norm, where live streaming is not just going to go away the second COVID goes away. It's, hold on, what is this? We see a lot of modern churches doing this already. When we have Hillsong, all these big, huge arena churches in the States, that's what they've been doing for years and years and years. And that's how they've been reaching countries all over the world. But a lot of people say certain denominations look at that type of ministry as, oh, that's wrong. That's not what ministry is supposed to do. That's not what, they're taking the focus away. It's, yes, sure, there's always positive and negative aspects to everything, but how about we just take the positives? What can we learn from them? Sure, if that's their message is different and the way they do it is not the way you like to do it, what can you learn from them? We can always learn something from someone. We don't need to have pride be an issue, right? You can always learn from someone. And when it comes to online services, when some people like to look at other churches and compare themselves, I look at other churches because I go, what can I do to maybe, that's a cool idea. Maybe I can put that, maybe my community would like that. You look at it as you're helping each other, almost like a little Jenga tower. You're building on each other to get the message. And as Jeremiah mentioned, getting that message pushed forward. That's all that it's all about. And one thing with when it comes to technology is this could not be a better way to connect different generations. I mean, it's beautiful to see where, seniors in their senior home are coming in on Zoom, but they need their grandkid there beside them because they don't know how to set up their laptop, and the grandkids beside them during the service. And we try to connect with them, say, oh, hey, Ethan, how are you? I haven't seen you. Sorry. I'm Aaron, by the way. You're just creating this natural, organic conversation community. There's no stigma. There's no pressure where everyone's in the comfort of their own homes. But when we did our one thing that I like to do now is when we do little anthems during the week, for example, for Valentine's Day, we did All You Need Is Love by the Beatles. Who doesn't know that song? Everyone knows that. I got the choir in. We recorded every single voice. Got a nice little 20-person voice. I got a kid who drums. He's about 15, 16, great drummer. Put him on the drums. Had a trumpet player on here, and we put it on Facebook. Within 2-3 days, it's about 700 views. And we were blown away. We're like, whoa, 700 views. How people just reaching out? They're just connecting, going, oh, hey, sorry, what's your name? What is that? What are you a church? What? But you did all you need is love. I'm like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't we? Isn't that what we need? Love is love. Love doesn't mean something different just because a non-Christian person says it, right? So creating that connection, we're no longer on this little pedestal that I think everyone thinks we're on. That church has now become real. That's the one thing I've noticed. Church has now become this real connection where it's not, you know what, Sunday morning I'm tired, I'll just go back to sleep. It's a place you want to be in. And sorry, just one last point. What Jeremiah was saying is now taking the focus away from Sunday. Now you've created a platform where you can be promoting the message all week. Doesn't have to stop. So we do reflections every single day, twice a day. On Thursday, we do a hymn sing where it's a big Zoom call like this. We have about 40 people and we just all sing together. It's a little chaotic, I will say, but it's fun hymns that everyone sends in saying, Aaron, can we sing this next week? Absolutely. No problem. Aaron, do you mind if we sing this one next week? Absolutely. Half of them don't know it, but half of them learn it. It's such a great experience. It's something where, people can just enjoy, of course, in COVID, no one's allowed to sing in churches. There's no performance element anymore. It's no music director and his musicians will make music for the church. No. We're all still together. We're just doing it a different way. And it's beautiful to see the amount of people who have been touched by this new style, I want to say, for us anyway, of ministry, which I think is going to become the new norm going forward.
I think you've answered all three of those questions in that one statement, but you're still was talking about the opportunity we have being on the platform we are able to be a part of, and that's fantastic. Hey, thank you guys so much for taking your time with us this evening. It's been fabulous. We could keep talking, couldn't we, Cheryl? The conversation is just, I think we've just touched on a lot of different things, but we could go into a lot deeper. And I really appreciated the time that Aaron and Jeremiah have spent with us. And if you're at home right now and you've been watching this, or wherever you're watching this from, and you've really enjoyed this, so have we. But we would like you to leave a note down below there. Give us a comment and hit the thumbs up button there, the like, and subscribe. Tell your friends, share the experience. This is the thing. Take this link and put it on your social platforms and let them know what we're up to. And we're just so glad that we had a chance to do this.
Absolutely. And before I forget, Jeremiah has sent me some links, so I am going to put them on our description when we come off here. These are for churches to help them, articles on how to get new matrix. Is that right, Jeremiah?
Absolutely. These are what we call new metrics for churches in COVID. So asking yourself, how many new people have I reached online? How many people will be touched with the love of Jesus? How many people will we connect in the community? And where are our people? So these are 4 things that we're introducing to our churches to help our churches get away from that Sunday morning attendance metric, which is, just out the window right now with COVID, and into something that I believe will create more momentum in the life of the church. So it's not necessarily about music, but I think it'll benefit ministry leaders and pastors.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you putting it on there. Now, people, this is a free course he's allowing for us to have access to. So take advantage of this in the description, and it'll benefit you greatly.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Jeremiah, for taking the time, for sharing your insights on this. It's absolutely amazing hearing your thoughts. As I always say, I love your hearts on all of this. I love your hearts because your passion is just so for what God originally wanted. I mean, it just goes back to the basics, so I just love that. I know I focus on the music, but it is a bigger picture. Music is part of it. And it sometimes is the indicator of where a church is at, but there is a bigger picture to it. And so I hope that you who are watching got something out of this and were challenged. I hope you were. I hope you were challenged in this.
Can I also say, Aaron, I really appreciate so much what you're doing with the sound studio. For me as a musician, if I wasn't part of a church growing up, then I wouldn't be able to exercise my musical talents. To have that resource for non-church people is absolutely essential. And I just want to bless you and thank you for doing this. This is incredible. It's something that actually Glenn Kaiser was one of our previous panelists just last week. He was talking about how they made a recording studio across from their ministry center so that they could have that outreach opportunity. And I think that what you're doing is phenomenal. Just wanted to bless
Thank
you.
you. No, honestly, this whole idea came out not just based on, what does the community need? It was something as simple as when I go record, or not record, when I go to play with a group of friends, just on my own personal time. And we were in downtown Toronto. We had to go to a rehearsal studio, pay about, 40, 50, 60 an hour, then rent the equipment. I'm not going to lug a piano downtown. No one's going to lug their drum kit. Just looking at that idea. And funnily enough, after this Zoom call, I'm having a friend of mine. So I essentially bartend on the side, I've just been doing that part time. So the amount of people that I've met who are musicians in hospitality, I mean, they go hand in hand. They're everywhere. So we have a guitarist, a friend of mine. No way is he Christian. No way is religion even on his mind. But that's not the point of the conversation. He's coming in going, he's asking me, hey, when can we come? When can we play? Hey, do you mind? I have a few buddies who want to check out your studio because it's fantastic. And, they're from Aurora. Markham is situated perfectly. It's great space. It's just such a door where anyone is welcome. It doesn't matter. Anyone is welcome. Why not come? And then maybe we can have that conversation down the road. Who knows? But that's not the point. Everyone wants to skip all the next little steps. They just want to see the end result, see that number on their attendance on Sunday go up. That's your outlook, go somewhere else. I'm sorry. We're a whole different society. It's a whole different ball game. It's not as simple as, but their kids will come to the church. I mean, if the parents are coming, why wouldn't that's how we did it when we grew up, right? That doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't. So now finding the new step forward, I think, is the.
And we just want to thank you for watching the GMIHub online. We really want to just remember we encourage unity, community, mentorship, and talent growth, and that is something that we're big on. Please check us out on our social media platforms. We've got Twitter, we've got Instagram, we've got Facebook, and also the GMIHub.ca is our website. Please go there. We have our Christmas compilation, and it's going to be June 13th. It's the last date to get your submissions in. And we're looking forward to seeing some amazing submissions this year for our Christmas compilation. So I want to bless you and thank you for joining us. And we're going to have to say good night and God bless.
I won't add to that. That's awesome. Have a good week, everyone. We'll see you next week when we are going to be talking about marketing for artists.